rostering students, that rostering is still in flux as class lists are getting finalized. Your first person to check with if you're not seeing your class list when you're expecting to, or if you're wanting to have an ETA of when that will be ready, would be your office manager, because they'll know like, oh yeah, those are getting put into Synergy, later this week. You should have it at this time, or don't even ask, because we still have 10 people coming in the door a day getting registered. They'll have the latest information for you. Okay. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of Seesaw history, do a quick review of journal activities, talk about Seesaw in a traditional school day, look at the activity libraries, look at the student experience and teacher view, talk about some collaboration ideas, and review just some settings for managing your Seesaw class. With a smaller group and the depth of knowledge that Gavin and I have, we might go off agenda here and there, or if there's a question that comes up, we're happy to discuss those as they arise. So feel free to put something in the chat, raise your hand using the Zoom function, and we can discuss things as well. Okay, so Gavin, take it away.
Sure. Just a brief history of Seesaw. I think the grassroots effort kind of started at Morelands, maybe one or two other elementaries. Teachers first discovered this, in its maybe first or second year in existence in the tech space. And those teachers that found it really loved it. They started working with students on the free version. They found that students were very engaged by the activities, and it kind of grew out from those teachers to people at their school. And I didn't get involved until Morelands hit kind of a critical point where they realized there were enough people using it that they wanted to try to do it as a whole school effort. And so they reached out to me, they asked what it would take, and I helped kind of figure out, can we get a pilot? Can we move from the free version to a schools version? And did kind of a lot of the legwork. And then I learned a lot from the teachers who had already started using it. I did a lot of documentation, ended up training some of the staff who were new to it. And it kind of built really at Morelands the most in those early years. Meanwhile, there were a handful of teachers still growing this at other schools, Maddie included. And I started to reach out to a couple of those schools where we were seeing a good amount of people using it, and started to make some connections with those folks. And then, of course, as it started to grow from there, a pandemic happened, and we got sort of emergency clearance to go ahead and do a school-wide or district-wide implementation for elementary. And at the same time, we've been looking at Schoology as a learning management system. And of course, that got sped up really quickly. We had been looking at a couple other learning management systems, and we're getting ready to get some teacher feedback to kind of inform a decision. But because of the pandemic, we had to make that decision a lot faster than we had hoped. The good news was we got there and we actually, implemented these things. We're able to use them right away. And now we have all this great knowledge on how to use these digital tools. But now, of course, that had to be rebalanced once we got away from remote learning back to in-person learning last year. And now we're again kind of, we're finding where its rightful place is in a more traditional school year. We also have a lot of new teachers coming on board who may not have experience. And so we're trying to, make sure everybody has access to these tools and do the trainings as best we can. And obviously here we have some folks with some experience, and we'll just look to keep building on that. It always works best when there's a lot of folks using it. It's a very collaborative, friendly tool. And so one of our jobs is to kind of keep helping schools, grade level teams find a way to use it effectively for themselves and make sure it's part of their weekly or daily lives with students in a digital environment. A lot of cool tech skills that can be taught along with it as well.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention a fun thing about kind of the history, not a fun thing, but a thing about the history of Seesaw is that I came into this position in March 2020. So right as we were shifting to remote learning, I had the background with Seesaw as a classroom teacher. But Seesaw was not a thing that was used to, share. The activity feature was there, but it wasn't used as a way for students to complete instruction and show their learning remotely, right? But because we were one of the very first districts in the country to shut down, we also, in a lot of our meetings and the feedback that we gave in our conversations with Seesaw, our district and our experiences helped other districts around the country and the world as well in how they were going to respond to the pandemic. So I just think that's kind of a cool fact, and shout out to the work done by teachers in our district of getting folks on board and using Seesaw quickly to help students still feel connected to each other remotely during that time. So just think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I feel very fortunate that Maddie came on board when she did, because we had so much work to do on such a large level. And it was very apparent within, I think, a couple months of her kind of getting her feet under her as an instructional tech coordinator, that she would surpass me in terms of expertise and knowledge on the subject. So I was very happy when she became our Seesaw lead. And I would say that I think we'll both be incredibly happy when we can look out at the district and say, you know, you really got to talk to this teacher or this teacher over here, because they're the ones who are doing the best stuff and really surpass our knowledge when it comes to actually doing this stuff in the classroom.
And just to clarify, I was not hired into this role because of the pandemic. It was just happenstance that my first day was scheduled to be right as we were shifting to close things down. So it was quite a way to start the job, but I never ever felt like I didn't belong, because I just had to jump in right away.
Perhaps a bit of fate there.
Yeah, very, very crazy. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to, and Gavin, I'm looking at a Seesaw 201 outline to kind of guide, but feel free to pause me or redirect in another direction as needed. We'll do a little bit in the slide deck and then do a lot of things live in Seesaw as well. So first, I just want to do a quick overview of just the standard journal view and options. I'm not going to go in depth into those, just a refresher of like what the Seesaw platform looks like. Then we'll talk a little bit about what a typical day might look like using Seesaw in your instruction. So I'm going to go first to Seesaw. So the way that most teachers get to Seesaw is starting at Clever. And then if you are a classroom teacher, and you have been a classroom teacher in the past and you've already had a Seesaw account, you'll have a tile that looks like this, where it just says Seesaw and just has this Seesaw icon. If you don't have this tile, you should still have this Seesaw for Staff tile. The Seesaw for Staff tile is just a link to the main Seesaw login page. This Seesaw tile is what connects you to Seesaw via Clever. So they're a little bit different. You might see both. You might just see the Seesaw for Staff tile. So I'm going to go ahead and click Seesaw for Staff. That'll take me to this login screen. I've already logged in, so that's why it brought me in right away. So I'll show that again. So this is your standard Seesaw login page. You'll click I'm a teacher, and you will sign in with your @nsd.org account. If you have in the past, or you've been in the habit of doing teacher sign in with Google, it might happen that at some point an account gets created for you separately. Teacher sign in with Google signs you in with your username at apps.nsd.org email, and that is a different email address than your @nsd.org email. So you do have two email addresses through the district. If someone actually sends you an email to the apps address, it will get forwarded to your Outlook inbox. But if you create an account with your Google email, that will be a separate account than if you create one that's just with your @nsd.org email. We like to just keep things really complicated. That's the whole plan. We want to keep you on your toes. We want to keep you guessing, going, which account did I create? Did I do Google? Did I do this? What should I press? It's just keep it fun. So that's what we do. All right, then we click teacher sign in, and you will come to the journal in a class of yours. You might have more than one class. You might have no classes if you've just started your account. Or you might even have no classes if you had classes last year, but they've been archived, because that's what we do at the end of a school year, is archive old classes so that they're not still showing up in your list of classes. They're not still showing up in students' old lists of classes. So expect that it could be the first of multiple classes that you're a part of, or it could be no classes that you see right away. Okay, so if you are in a class, your own settings for your account are going to be found over on the left side by your name. And you would click on the gear icon and account settings to change things like your name, display name, your icon for yourself. So you can put in a photo of yourself if you'd like to. You can also use the camera to take a photo or upload other images. You can from here see what email address you're using for your account if you have done like an auto sign in and you've forgotten what email you're using. Just a few options in here. You can turn on email notifications and other options as well. If you've done any of Seesaw's training to become a pioneer or ambassador, that also will show up here. Okay. All right, so that's account settings over here. Also on this side, you have the ability to create new classes, toggle between different classes if you have multiple classes or you've been added as a co-teacher to someone else's class, it will also show up there. So we'll close that. On the very right side is the wrench icon, and that is what we look at to change settings for your class. Being able to change the class name is something you can do. Just a reminder that if you do change your class name, please keep in your class name, your last name, and your grade level. So if myself or Gavin or your STS is trying to help you with something related to your class from the admin perspective in Seesaw, it's a lot easier for us to help you if we can find quickly your class. If you just name it something like stars and no other identifiers, it can be difficult for us to provide any support. Some fun things you can change: the color for the background. You can relate that to your favorite color or maybe school colors for your school. You can also change the icon for the class by choosing one of the preset ones or uploading an image. Okay. I'm going to stop going over the settings here for a second. We can look over a few more later. But what I really wanted to talk about is envisioning what Seesaw might look like for you. So I know earlier when Kelly was talking about that she'd used Seesaw, she was glad we were offering this course again because she didn't take it last year. So I'm assuming, Kelly, you might have used Seesaw during remote learning, and then maybe last year here and there, or not at all. Just like, we're not doing remote learning. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to touch it. We can do that another time. I'm in person with my students. I don't want to be assigning tons of activities or anything like that. And as an instructional technology department, just know we do not want you to just be assigning 5 activities every day for your students to complete, and all of their work needs to be done on the computer. That is not the goal of our department. We want you to have the flexibility, support, the options to use tools in ways that will be helpful for you and your students. So with that in mind, what might a typical day look like using Seesaw? So you might decide that you are going to create and assign an activity to the whole class that you want all of them to do, whether it is a morning entry task that they do every day, or you have something that is just happening that day for work on math and finding different shapes around the classroom that are what you're studying in math. Maybe you have an individual or small group of students working on an assessment activity that is having them record their voice, showing what letter names and sounds they know, so that you can go back and listen and assess that later. Maybe you have students who are saying, oh my gosh, Ms. Oakley, I just built this really cool tower during choice time and I want to show my parents. Can I take a picture and post it to my Seesaw journal? Yeah, absolutely. That's like super cool looking, Grayson. Your mom's gonna love it, right? You're having different things that you can do with your students. Some things that I think teachers weren't always thinking about from a remote learning perspective back into a classroom perspective is also some creative ways that you can use Seesaw. When you, as a teacher, click the add button and post student work, yes, you can take a picture of a student's writing and add it to their journal, right? If you have an iPad or using the front-facing camera on your device, you can do that. But you could also hit the video button, and while the students are working on the reading lesson and they're really working hard on building stamina at reading to self for 20 minutes, you could take a video of them and quietly towards the microphone narrate for your families to see what it is that you're doing in class. Hey, families, just wanted to let you know that we're working really hard on our goal. We've so far hit 12 minutes of reading quietly. Look at Victoria and Emma. They're doing such an awesome job of, reading their books and doing their best reading. Way to go, readers. End video, post to journal. And now your parents who have been a little anxious about that return back to school, they're seeing that their kid is happy, healthy, enjoying the classroom, engaged in learning. Their anxiety is going down. You aren't even sending them a specific email or anything like that, but you're building that connection between your students, their families, and the classroom as well. One of my favorite things that I've ever used Seesaw for was I had a year where I was teaching first grade and I had a larger group of students that I knew in my class were new to my school. And I was like, oh man, how are they going to know? I had a few emails were like, what do they do when they get off the bus? How do they do this? How does this happen? And I just took my iPad, turned on video, and walked around the school from the perspective of this is where they're going to get off the bus. They're going to walk up this hill. This is our lineup spot. Then our portables right here. I can't wait to see you. Have an awesome rest of your week. I can't wait to meet you, blah, blah, blah. In my welcome back to school email, I told parents like, hey, we're using Seesaw. Make sure you're connected and you've logged in. Email me if you're not able to get connected. Then I was able to build connections with kids and their families before they've even met me. And it was really powerful. And that was one of my best years of teaching as far as the connections that I made with families and their ability, their comfort with being able to come to me with questions, but also with respect, because they knew that I really cared, because they could see it and hear it in my voice and those videos and those connections we built. Can also do things like sharing announcements with families via typing a note. You don't have to do all of these things every day, every subject, but it's good to try out the different tools so that way you can get familiar with the different functions in Seesaw and how you can enhance student learning and capture their learning and build that community as well. Gavin, anything you wanted to add there? Oh, muted. Once he starts teaching in-person classes, he just can't remember the mute button on Zoom.
Yeah, you don't have to mute yourself when you're in person.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, no, I was just saying, I love the anecdote you told about using it yourself to post things for new students. I would just offer some of my favorite activities that I've seen. A kindergarten teacher working on letter recognition with students early on in the year, doing an assessment to see what letters they could identify. Had just a simple list of letters, either, the full alphabet or just parts of the alphabet, and she would do the work of getting a student sitting down with that and press record for them and then hand them the iPad, and they would go through and identify each letter as best they could. And then she would save it, and families and her immediately knew where that student was in their progress of learning the alphabet. And then later in the year, you would see the students be able to go through the whole alphabet, and they'd have this series of videos of them getting better and better at that one skill. And that was something that kind of stuck with me. Another one was math arrays, more of a fourth grade math class, and having a teacher who in her classroom had all these different natural arrays that had become part of her environment. And so after teaching students about them on their iPads, they went around taking pictures of different arrays that they found, and then doing different math equations with those arrays as part of their voice and choice and learning, and just ways that they were able to demonstrate it. And then of course they'd add pages and draw arrays, and then it became an extensive series of pages that demonstrated their knowledge of how arrays worked and how to do the math around them.
Yeah. And I know I'm not sure of what, I haven't looked through any like COVID handbooks for back to school this year. I'm not sure what expectations will be for amount of time quarantining, or what's expected for providing for students who are at home and not in the classroom. So I'm not sure what all those expectations will be. However, using Seesaw in your classroom is a great way to keep students connected to what's going on in the classroom, whether they're home with COVID or they've got the flu, anything, right? That's a way to keep them connected, as well as you may be able to find some activities that maybe you don't assign to the whole class, but you assign to that student, letting the family know, like, hey, if they're like still staying home for quarantine, but they're feeling able to do some work, we've got some activities in Seesaw that they can complete. It's another way to help support their continued connection to what's going on in the classroom. So this being a 201 class, we do assume that you have some experience from prior years, but we'll still kind of go through activities and being able to access activities. Gavin, do you think we need to go over anything more in the class settings, or are we good on that?
I don't think so, unless somebody needs to show like how to add other teachers if you're part of a co-teaching or job share, or.
I'll just mention that real quick because I don't think that's a bad idea. I think from looking at the chat, we have some guest teachers, and we have sorry, I just lost everything. We have some guest teachers and mostly classroom teachers. I don't think we have any like specialists in this group. So if you are a guest teacher and there's a class that you teach in regularly, you can chat with that teacher about like, hey, would you like to add me as a co-teacher to your Seesaw class? So when I'm teaching your class, I can use Seesaw to assign activities and keep families up to date on what's happening in the classroom. If you have maybe a paraeducator who works in your room and you want them to be able to post activities or post other things that are happening in the classroom, that's where you would go in the class settings to manage teachers, and then invite them via email. So you would just type in their email address, and there's also, of course, this click here to generate a co-teacher invite link. And other scenario would be if you're still having issues, you can ask your STS or myself or Gavin to add someone to a class. And the other thing I'll say is if you have maybe support staff in your building who you guys are all agreeing that they're going to be added to all the classes, that's a good request to have your STS or myself just add them from a Seesaw administrator perspective, because it's just pretty simple and easy for us to do. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so we're going to go to the activities section. I'm going to go to this class that has some students in it. So this class has a little sample student that it has the sample student from Seesaw, Estudiante Ejemplo, which is sample student in Spanish, but I actually created them. And then it also has McKenna, Gavin's daughter, in the class as well. So this one has a few students in it. And we're going to go over assigning activities. Remember, you can either click on the activities tab and go to browse lessons library, or click add and click assign activity. Either button will take you to this spot right here, to your library. Some things that I think are a little bit more 201 or 101 here are some of the things you can do to copy and edit an activity to make it your own, ways that you can share activities with other teachers, and also using and leveraging the school and district and community libraries. We went over that a little bit in 101 today, but we can go a little bit deeper today. So I'm going to start with the school and district library. If you're not familiar with this resource, these are activities that have been created by North Shore School District teachers, and they are activities that teachers have chosen to share with the whole district library. They're saying, you know what, this was a good activity. It went well for my students. I think other teachers at my school or in the district might be able to use this, okay? So if you ever create your own activity, just because you teach in North Shore does not mean that it automatically goes to the school and district library. We had someone ask that question earlier, which I think was earlier today, which was, I think, a good clarification that creating an activity or having it in your library as a North Shore teacher does not automatically make that activity go in here. So if you're playing around with something and creating an activity, you're not going to be adding some sandbox things into here. So this is really helpful that you can adjust by grade, subject, and or school. So you can look and see, okay, I just want to see the things submitted by the teachers at my school, at Morelands Elementary, or at Kenmore Elementary. These are not in alphabetical order. I was like, where are these schools? So you can sort it that way. There are a lot of different great ones in here. So I'm going to pick an assignment in here, and I'm going to show what I could do if I wanted to share this activity with another teacher. And I'm also going to show what I can do to copy an activity and then turn it more into my own. Okay. So here's this activity that was created by Ms. Van Dyke. She, just a full disclosure, this is one of my former colleagues that I taught next to for a few years, and she's a good friend of mine. But during remote teaching, she made these activities that went with first grade TCI lessons to help her students still engage with that content. So I'm thinking, oh, I really like this one. And I think my first grade team at Kokanee Elementary could really use it as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the 3 dots over here on the bottom right. This is always your more function. And I'm going to choose share activity. When I choose that, I have a few different options. It says I can email to teachers, share on social media, get teacher link, get activity embed code, and share to school and district libraries. I would recommend that you use get teacher link. It creates a hyperlink that takes them right to this activity. Sometimes the email to teachers function can be a little wonky, so it's not one that I recommend. So I would do get teacher link and copy that. And now there's a few things you can do from here. If anyone was in here in our Teams for Teams training that Gavin and I led yesterday, this would be a great use of Teams, of saying, hey guys, I found this great science resource and I want to share it. If you're not using Teams for Teams yet, that's fine. but you could email it to teachers. You could just open Outlook, put it in an email. You could also have a collaborative doc. I have a sample on here. I like know it's in here, so I'm like, just keep clicking, Maddie. Here we go. So maybe I have a shared Google Doc with my colleagues, and we say that we're going to, maybe instead of for every day having an activity for each content area, maybe once a week. Maybe we're going to plan for a month. What are some activities that we're going to share with each other? So you could have a shared Google Doc and then link the activity that you've found into that doc. So you can all click on it and assign it to your students. This would definitely, like, this level of collaboration is something that I feel like I really missed out on in moving from the classroom to my position right when I did, is I wish I could be in just to kind of make my workload maybe a little bit more working smarter, not harder, and being able to share lessons and activities in this way. But yeah, I would have loved to, with my team of 4 first grade teachers, split up some of what we were looking to work on and share ideas in this way. So that's one thing you can do for sharing. Another thing that you can do is you can add activities to collections. You can organize your activity library into collections like assessment, back to school, community, December, literacy, math. So that way, later when you're trying to look through the things you've saved, you can have it organized into activities that are organized how you'd like them. Okay. And then the other thing, I'm going to use a different activity here. I'll use this one. Okay. So let's say I really like this activity. I think it looks good. I want to assign it to my class, but I know I have some students who are just really still working on basic reading. And I know it's going to be much more helpful for them to have audio instructions instead of just written instructions on what to do. So I'm going to choose to copy and edit this activity. So right now you can see, like, the owner of this activity is Shelly Aronson. If I want to just assign it as is, I can just press that, no problem. Press the assign button and assign it to my class. But if I want to make some adjustments, I would choose the 3 dots in the bottom, then click copy and edit activity. Now I can adjust the title. The directions are still there, but now I can add voice instructions and read the instructions for my class. So I'm going to do that right now, just for an example. Tap the add response button. Next, tap the drawing tool and complete all the slides. Tap the green check to upload your work to your portfolio. So now when my students are working on this activity and they click view instructions, they'll also see this play icon that they can click. Tap the add response button. I'm not going to play the whole thing. You get the idea. But additionally, if you see an activity where you're like, this is great, and it has voice instructions, but you know what? It's going to mean more to my students to have my voice instructions. You can copy and edit the activity, delete the voice instructions that are there already, and record your own. So that way they're hearing it in your voice. So just some ideas there. And then there will already be templates attached, but you can edit those templates as well. So you could say, oh, maybe, you know, it's going to be supportive for my students to also have the numbers on this template, not just the cube. So I'm going to put the numbers in as well. So any activity that's there that is shared, people are also agreeing that people can copy and edit the activity to work for their class. So it's okay for you to do that. Gavin, anything to add on? No. Okay, cool. Sometimes I'll ask and then like look away and then be like, oh, he didn't say anything. He's probably shaking his head.
No, the only thing, just as a review, did you talk about like the shortcuts, the add, drawing, check shortcuts? how those
Good.
are written in.
Yes. Okay. So you can see in the instructions, like text box here, that the person who wrote these instructions had put colon add, colon drawing, colon check. These are Seesaw's little mini codes for making an image appear in the directions instead of just text. And honestly, the way that I remember these codes is I will just Google Seesaw icon shortcuts and I'll always get what I need. So I'll just look at the image results and be like, oh yeah, here it is. Okay, this is from the Seesaw help page. And then I can see right here what I need to put in to get the images that I want. Seesaw's done a really great job with this accessibility of making sure that they really use similar icons all the time to make it intuitive for students, families, teachers. So it's really great to have this available to make things simpler and easier for everyone involved. So that's there, and it does have a help article about it that shows how to use it there. And this one's updated. We even have the PDF that you can download. You could print it if you need to, have it right there for yourself. Okay, thanks, Gavin. That was a good reminder. Okay. Just pointing this out in case this is something, an area that you're playing around with some more. These Seesaw lessons are a new thing that Seesaw is rolling out. Using these lessons does kind of get more into curriculum, which is, as you may or may not be aware, in our district, we have protocol for if you're wanting to teach curriculum to students, it needs to be approved. So these lessons are not necessarily approved curriculum. And so we're not recommending using these lessons. Also keeping in mind, Seesaw is an amazing ed tech company, but they are a company. So they make money by subscriptions for students to use the service. And every company is always trying to figure out how to grow their business. And their next way of doing that is trying to roll out these lessons that districts would also pay for, adding on for students. So just keeping in mind that that's not something that we're really supporting right now. So if you see it and you're curious about it, that's kind of our standard response about that. Gavin, sound good on that one? Cool. All right. Okay. And here we go. So we still have the school and district, your own library, which is whenever you heart a lesson, it will go into your library so you can refer back to it. School and district is a really valuable resource because you know it's coming from other teachers in the district. Community is more of that more gray area as far as using things that are not approved curriculum, because many of the activities are quick supplemental things for things that you may be teaching as part of your curriculum. This is something that that we still think is a good resource for teachers to be able to use. I will say that Seesaw does very basic vetting of the things that go into the community library. So if you create an activity, you think it's great, and you're like, I want to put this in my school and district library, and I want to submit it to the community library. They'll review it, make sure there's nothing flagged that's like inappropriate, and then it's available for other Seesaw users to use. So I'd say keeping in mind that whenever you're looking at an activity in here, it's just like any other online resource or showing a YouTube video. You want to look through it all before you decide that you're going to use it with your class. And remember that you always have the option of that copy and edit feature as well. Okay. I'm looking to see where I want to go next. And I would also say, just another tip, if you're ever wanting to create your own activity, sometimes it helps to look at, like sometimes writing those instructions from scratch with the icon codes can be a little tedious. So sometimes I'll go to my old activities. That one doesn't even have directions, but I'll like go to an old activity, go to edit, and I'll copy the directions from an old one. And then when I'm writing my new activity from scratch, if I want to make my own, I'll just paste that in because I know some of those directions will be the same and I don't have to type it all from scratch. So just an idea. Let's see. All right.
It's helpful to think of it very much like the classic peanut butter and jelly making directions that we give kids. All right, you know, you're going to give the directions for how to tie your shoes, or you're going to give the directions for how to make a PB&J. If you don't put the directions all in there, the sandwich kind of comes out a little wonky with the peanut butter on the outside of the toast instead of on the inside of the sandwich. That you get better at that. The first couple of times you do it, totally okay to make an inside out peanut butter sandwich as you practice and kind of get better at it. But eventually you kind of pick up on the rhythm and be like, oh yeah, here are the steps. And then she'll probably show the sample student as well. I also have McKenna logged in on my iPad, so I could do an activity, but it's nice to be able to create the first few and then test them out as a sample student and really experience what it's like completing somebody else's activity. And then when you do that, you'll pick up on some of the flaws in design or steps that you missed kind of right away. And you'd be like, oh yeah, and then you can add it back in real quick. And then eventually it becomes kind of, you know, just nature and habit.
Yeah. I wanted to show one resource before I forget, and then I'm going to show like assigning an activity. And I want to make sure, Gavin, that I also show that progress section, which is new, especially I think it came out at the end of 2021. So some people who might have used Seesaw a lot for remote learning might not know about this feature, and it's really helpful for looking at activities and tracking that. So the resource I wanted to mention that I've mentioned in other trainings before is there is, let me find it. I think I might have it on this slide deck. Yes. Okay. So there are two resources that can be really helpful, external resources for helping if you're really into wanting to like create more activities or get more into what you can do in Seesaw. There's Facebook groups that are Seesaw teachers, and there are spin-off ones like Seesaw for bilingual teachers. Like if you're teaching at Wooden in the bilingual program, Seesaw for kindergarten teachers that are grade level specific. And then the other one that I really like is Chris. I'm trying to remember how to say his last name. I actually tagged him one time in Facebook and asked him like, how do I say your name so I pronounce it correctly in a training, but it's been a little while. But he has tons of videos on his YouTube channel, all about different ways that you can use Seesaw, and many of the tools that he uses with it are Google based, which you have access to as well. So it's just really nice to see some of the cool things you can do. So his channel, I will copy that and put that in the Zoom chat if anyone wants to open it and reference it later. But there's so many little at your own pace, bite-sized information that can be really helpful if you'd like to check that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and assign an activity, see what it looks like from the student view, from the teacher view, all of those things, and then also look at the progress tab. So far in this sample course that I made earlier, I added my son to the class because I could easily get into his account to show it from his view. And I have assigned one activity to him. This activity I responded to as him, and so it was saved as a draft. So it's showing here as a draft. You can see that you'll kind of get this preview of how many responses you have, how many are waiting for approval, how many draft, how many not responded. And when you click on it, you'll see a little icon, a little tile for each student in your class if you've assigned it to your whole class. Okay. And also if you schedule an activity for later, it will show up in the scheduled section. If you archive an activity, it will show up here. And if you click on calendar, it will show which activities you have assigned on which days. So let's go to my library and let's assign another activity to him. I'm going to do this place value activity. So I'm looking through it and I'm thinking to myself all the things that we've taught about. So maybe I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a great activity that I think my whole team will like, but I'm going to make it my own a little bit more. So I'm going to do copy and edit. And I like the direction so far. Oh, I see we're maybe Canadian. So I'm going to change the spelling to make sure it fits how I'm teaching kids how to spell things. Complete the investigation on your own with a partner, drawing your label, your 3-digit numbers on the table. Explain which is largest, how you know this, plus the green. I'm going to say check twice. Then I'm also thinking, I really like to personalize the instructions and make sure it sounds like me. So I'm going to delete the current recording and add my own. I'm just going to do a quick one. Here's me reading the directions, talking them through. If I know this might go to other teachers in my group, I might say, hey, everyone, it's Ms. Oakley here with your math activity. So they know like I'm the teacher who assigned it. Green check. And I'm going to take a look at the template, see how it looks. Okay, looking good. That looks fine to me. I don't need to make any adjustments. So I'm going to do the green check because I think it looks great. Then I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to do the share activity, get teacher link. And then I might in my email send an email to my teammate saying here, Gavin, here's our math activity, our Seesaw math activity for the week. And pasting that link, sharing it with him. And now he's able to access that, save it to his library and assign it to all of his students as well. So I've gone through those steps, but I haven't assigned it yet. So I'm going to do that. Assign to sample class. Okay. Once I assign it, it does give me a link to go quickly right back to that activity in my class. So that's what this means when it says view activity in sample. I created this sample class today. Okay, so now I have 2 activities that I've assigned to my class today. One is about learning how to use Seesaw. One is place value 3-digit numbers. So, and I can see no one's done, there's no drafts or anything on this one yet, but that other one has a draft. So it's looking good. And if I look at my calendar, I can see that there. I'm going to do one more type as well, which is I'm going to schedule one. Let's do all. I'm going to schedule an emoji math challenge activity. I'm going to assign it. I want to assign it to this class, but instead of assigning it right away, I know that I have students that are going to like get into Seesaw, see this and work on it immediately when I haven't even explained the directions yet for this activity or why we're doing it. I want to wait till I've taught my lesson first. And I know I'm teaching my lesson on Friday. So I'm going to schedule it for Friday. And I know we normally have math around 10 o'clock. So I'm going to assign it for 10 o'clock, make sure I do AM and then check. All right. And now I'm going to assign it on Friday at 10 a.m. And if I go back to my class, I can see it's now in my scheduled folder here. So I have 2 that are assigned that students could work on now, 1 that's scheduled, nothing archived, and one on my calendar that's available right now. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to take that from right now we're seeing my view as the teacher, and I'm going to switch over to the student view of what the student sees. Okay. So that's one more. Here we go. Now you can see from looking at my screen here and looking up in the top left, I'm in a different browser profile and I'm logged in as my son. That's why you can see it. Now, I know it would be really nice to always just be able to see exactly what your students see. I'm only able to show this because I have a son in the district that I'm able to add to the class. So just a heads up, I know if you're like, oh, how did you do that and see exactly what they see? That's just my special tech department skills. So anyways, Lane here is in my class, and if he clicks on activities, he can see that he has 2 that he needs to do. One that he needs to finish that also is in his in progress folder because it's not finished. One to do that hasn't been started. So far, he hasn't finished anything. And then he has 2 activities on his calendar, and it's even showing the one that's going to be on his calendar later. Did I pick the wrong day when I said Friday? And then I think I picked the 20th. Oh, well. So we're going back here and I'm going to add my response. And you know what? I was so quick, I didn't really read those directions. So as a student, I can now click view instructions to see the instructions again, and I can play those instructions as well. So I've got those instructions down. I'm going to do the work. The instructions say that I need to roll the die and get my 3-digit number. I rolled it and my number was 347. So I'm going to say that's 347. So I'm going to start writing my response. And I'm going to use the type tool to type the word 347. Okay, now I'm going to move it here and I can make it smaller. There. Okay, so now I don't have enough time right now to do the entire thing. But if I was not finished with it in class, I could click save as draft and it would show up in my in progress section or my to do section. And then when I'm ready to come back to it, I can do finish response, add a little bit more. Then I'll do the green check. I'm going to also show submitting as a student this one. So finish response. Let's put his favorite color in here. And how old he is. Don't have him, so I'm not going to take a picture of him right now. Okay, and now I finally finished it, so I'm going to click done. Okay, so now as a student, I have nothing to do, nothing in progress. I have 2 things that are done. Okay, so that's my experience as a student. I also have this little notification bell. It does show me that earlier when I was doing my old class, I sent something back to him to make him review it. So your students will get a notification if you ever send something back. Let me show you what that looks like in here. So this is showing me I have 2 unapproved posts that are those lessons. I can get there from that review unapproved post button. I can also get there from going to activities and clicking on this button here. And it shows me who has something to review and who's done. Okay, so I can click here and I can give it a rating if I've set that up in my account. I can write a comment. I can like it. There's a lot of different things I can do. When I write the comment, I also have the option to record a comment. So again, if I'm working with maybe kindergarten or first grade, and I think it's going to be more effective to record a comment for students, I can do that. And then they can press the play button to listen to it back. But I might say, you know what, this one, that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and approve it. Okay. So now I'm done checking on that one. Close this. Before I go to check on this one, I'm going to show you another place where you can see progress of what students are working on. And it's actually, if you have a fair amount of activities, I think it's an even better way to track what's done and what students are still working on. This gives you the activity by activity view. This progress tab is newer in Seesaw, about a year old. And it allows you to see which activities your students have completed. Maybe they are waiting for approval. It shows you the status, and if you hover, it tells you. So completed, waiting for approval. This one should probably say not completed. Yeah, so not started. Okay. Now, if I have more students in my class, it's just going to look just like this. It's going to have a list of my students' names. It's going to show by activity, who's done what. And then right there, from there, I can click on it to see that activity as well. So I actually like this progress tab better for reviewing activities. It just works better for my brain to see that grid of everyone in the class, all the activities across the top, and what the status is of the work on the activity. So I'm going to go to this one that's waiting my approval. And I'm saying, wow, this looks really great, but he still didn't do the picture. So I'm going to comment, I still need your picture. Looks good so far. I'm going to post that, and then I'm going to send it back. Say, sorry, it's not ready. I'm sending it back to you. Okay, so now the status has changed to, oh, let's go back, this little draft icon. So a lot of those symbols stay the same to make it pretty easy for you to be able to tell like what's happening with things. That green check means done, just like it does when they submit it. The check with the circle around it, that's kind of a yellowy orange, also shows up here when it's in draft. Now from the student side, we can see that Lane has 3 notifications. Your item was updated. That's what they'll see when it's been approved. Ms. Oakley's commented on your post. She sent it back for review. If I go back to activities, I can see that I need to finish this. So I'm going to go finish response. And I also get this little pop-up with that comment from my teacher reminding me of what I need. Pretty cool, right? I still need your picture, Lane. Looks good so far. Now I know that I need to take a photo of myself, put it in my work. He's half me, so we can pretend that that works. And then resubmit it to my teacher. Okay. Then from the teacher view, I now have a notification that I have that one unapproved post. Go to my progress. I can see it's waiting approval. So those are just some really great added functionality that's been added to Seesaw in the last few years of having different ways to track student work. You can also, since we're in 201, I just want to point out that you can also do a skills view where you can tag activities relating to different skills. So it takes a little back end work because you have to add the skills and the rating for them, but it can be a way to track grading as well. So the Seesaw skills are here in progress. So manage skills would be here. So I can add skills and give them, I have to give them names and a quick code. It can be helpful to tie them to like Common Core standards. So for instance, in the gray, they have here reading comprehension, .ela.1. Okay, and then you can put the grade level, the subject, the category, and you can describe the skill, but you don't have to. Okay. So now I've got these skills in here. So now also when I add an activity, I can also, and I believe I can do it in here. I might not be able to in here. I might have to do it when I'm assigning it. Yeah. Okay. So when I assign an activity, I do have the option. Okay, so let's say I've looked at this activity, it looks great, I want to use it, okay? I'm just doing it quickly for the sake of our training. So I'm going to assign this to my class, but I'm also going to edit the skill. So when I click on that, I can select who it's assigned to. I can select the folder. I want this to be reading. And I can select the skill, okay? So, although, did I do that in the wrong class? Let me try that again. Like, of course, the skill that I just added isn't showing up. We'll just choose this one because it's existing. I probably did something wrong, so it's not showing that reading comprehension one, but we'll just choose the math one. I could also add from here as well if I wanted to. So I'm going to choose that it's math skill related, assigned to class. Okay. So here it is here. Student has it in their activities. I'm going to add a response. I'm going to do something. It's added. Now as the teacher, oh, I need to do 3 fingers, not 2. Now as the teacher with the response that I have, I can take this and I can give it a rating just on like a general scale, but I can also give it a score, like how many out of 4 they've gotten for this skill. So I can say, okay, they have met the standard, they're exceeding, they're almost there, they're farther, they need more support. So I can give them a score on the skill that they won't see as the student, and then approve it. And now in the progress section, I have my view of just if they've done it. I've got a little icon to show that I've scored it for a skill. And if I go to skills, I can see, okay, the last activity that Lane did of this kind for reading comprehension or for multi-digit addition right here, he got a 1 out of 4. So I can see how they're doing generally on some of the assignments I've given them. Gavin, I feel like I'm ready for you to pop in with some of your great thoughts because I've been talking so much.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to jump in. This has been such a deep dive and great review. My thought is large. I mean, I'm kind of off on like a grading tangent in my own head because I started to think about the different skills you want to assess and how those can live here. And then also in, a paper grade book, as well as an online curriculum. So we have always kind of seen skills as something that we would arrive to, a couple of years down the road. And back before the pandemic, we thought, this would be a great thing to introduce, in a year or 2. And then of course the pandemic hit and it's just been kind of delayed. I've only seen maybe 3 or 4 teachers ever use skills really effectively and kind of break into it. So this is like really high level, sort of one of the last things that I think folks track, but I think it's super powerful. I feel like there's a couple different ways you can grade things beyond stars, right? I don't
Yeah,
think
they have
there's
in
a
here.
couple different systems. Yeah, the skills rating
You
scale.
can change the number of stars. It has to be stars, but you can choose how many.
That's what it is.
If I were in the class again, like we talk about how if I were teaching again, I would love to be able to do X, Y, and Z. I would definitely use the 4 stars to help me see if they're earning 4, 3, 2s, or 1s on because that aligns to our report card.
And that's kind of where I was going to go with it. The 4-point rating scale and standards based kind of grading scale elementary makes the most sense to use. I mean, there's a lot of work that we can do as a district to get people aligned around that, so that a 4 is a 4 more equitably across classrooms. And this could be one of the ways that opens up conversations.
Yeah.
I think the power here, if people do start using skills, and there's a couple other ways to do this. There's collections, which I don't think we showed off. There were ways to tag assignments, which I think Maddie showed a little bit about, but not the collections part. The thing I want to emphasize is how this becomes an avenue towards collaboration and doing things with other teachers in your building, right? I get overwhelmed thinking about all the places I could go with skills. But if my 4th grade team was working with our admin and we had decided as a group that math was our focus for this year, and that's where we want to collect evidence and do eval stuff and really concentrate on our academic progress monitoring, I would partner that with this. I mean, you've got a digital component, and now it's suddenly not overwhelming to say, I'm going to throw 4 different math skills, right, for the first quarter of the school year in here, and I'm going to track those and just be mindful that when we do math, I want to collect artifacts from students and start to get them comfortable with Seesaw using math stuff. And that's it. That's the part that I bite off and chew. We might use it for 1 or 2 other cool things to collect, but I'm not going to use it with other subjects yet. And then instead I focus on math, and I can do some of these more advanced things as opposed to trying to do all the subjects and just kind of dabbling at the surface with some of the tools. That's the kind of approach that I would recommend, right? And then it's doing so much more for me as well. It's not only am I getting comfortable with some of the more advanced stuff in Seesaw, I'm getting my students comfortable with it. I'm keeping that contained to a thing that's manageable, and I'm using it to serve these other 2 purposes of connecting with families and, collecting evidence for my eval so that I can hit a couple goals specifically for this year. All of that's happening collaboratively within my team, and I'm not the only one that even has to create those activities. We just have to make some decisions together about what we're going to track to kind of set it up. And now there's a lot more purpose to what I'm doing with Seesaw.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know, that's kind of where you put my head, Maddie, with this.
Well, I was thinking back to that experience of, like you mentioned, what's your grade level team's goal this year? What are you going to focus on? Let's say it's exactly the example that you stated, and going back to just some of those ways that you make your life easier, right? Like, we're all going to do this same activity this week, right? We're all going to do this same activity that's actually a formative assessment this week, and we're all going to do it, and we're all going to rate it on this scale, and this is how we'll rate a 4, 3, 2, 1, and this is how we'll show evidence of our students moving. I think that can be one of the hardest parts, unfortunately, as a teacher, is making sure that you are using as a grade level common assessments, whether it's formative or summative, making sure that you're grading it the same way. If you have tools like this that can help you do that more efficiently and more effectively, awesome, right? So anyways, just
suddenly an equitable practice comes out of that, because you're doing things together, and there's an efficiency that happens too when you've created something together and are all using it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's really where I want to see more people go with it. I think we're scratching the surface. The pandemic helped a little bit by necessity. And now I think that's where bringing it back to the classroom and saying, well, this is where it fits and where it's appropriate. It's not going to be the only thing anymore, which is great. We don't want it to be the only thing, but it can serve these purposes all at once.
Yeah.
And then if you do have those conversations just about 1 or 2 activities and standardizing what you're expecting from students and the delivery, suddenly other things will naturally kind of follow that too.
Yep. And you're using a tool that everyone has access to, and everyone has hopefully some level of familiarity with, so that it's not a big barrier to entry there.
Yeah. I would also say these are the kinds of things that we can help with. If you have, and you know that your team or your SDLT or a larger group of teachers is interested in this and has the energy for it, schedule times with us to come out, and we can kind of help facilitate that process. We love to sit in on team team meetings, SDLT meetings, and brainstorm and map out some of this stuff, or just provide a 10-minute or 15-minute quick training that's going to get people into it. So don't feel like you have to take this back to them and lead it yourself. The idea is just stoking the fire and then bringing us as some of the bigger logs to throw in on that fire to keep it burning.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to show additionally a view that you might not always see as well, which is Seesaw from the parent perspective. So I'm logged into my parent account here, and you can see that I can see right away things that have been posted to Lane's journal. So, and remember, this was the activity that I gave a 1 star to, right? As a parent, I cannot see that. You as the teacher get to decide when you're sharing that information. So as you're tracking like scores on things, that is like you're tracking until you're ready to share it. Then once you're ready to share that, then you have the ability, when you click on that child's name, you have the ability to print, you know, a report of how many stars they got on this one response. You can share if they're saying, how did you decide that my child had a 3 instead of a 4 on the report card for this area in math? You can use this to help show what informed that decision making, and pretty easily. So I just wanted to point that out as well, that it's not something that the student or the parent is going to see, or it won't place a value. Sometimes when students are seeing grades like that, it can place a value for like their work, even if we know that they're making progress. Sometimes we don't want that to be public to them. So I just wanted to point out that that's also not immediately visible. Also just know that as a family, in a family account, I can go back and see my students' archived classes. So I can see old things from other years because of our Seesaw for Schools accounts. So pretty, lots of options as a family member. And I also get like notifications and messages in Seesaw as well. We didn't really touch on messages as much, but that's also a feature in Seesaw. There's so much. I'm kind of wanting to leave our training there for the moment and see if there are any other questions or things that folks wanted us to show again. And yeah, we hope that you found some good value from this course.
Maddie, I had a question. When I've utilized shared activities,
Mhm.
once in a while, there'll be an activity that I cannot copy and edit. Do you see that ever?
I would think
Or
that
what
might only be
version
the
would be?
case if you don't realize that it's actually your activity and it's just like the option is edit. I don't know, or maybe it's something that like Seesaw has created and it doesn't have that option. Gavin, any thoughts?
I haven't seen that before.
Yeah,
Okay.
that one. Yeah. Oh, I did want to show one more thing, which is kind of a cool function. Sometimes I had some teachers who were like co-teaching on things together. And, you know, you each have your own activity library, right? So one teacher would assign something and the other teacher could see it was assigned to students, but they couldn't get into the co-teacher's activity library to like copy it and maybe assign it in another class as well. I just wanted to show another shortcut for sharing activities. So maybe you've already assigned an activity to your students and you want to, you now want to share it with the rest of your team. And what you can do is go to activities and again, click on those 3 dots. If you click get student link, this is to share it specifically with students, but there's down at the bottom, there's this get teacher share link instead. And that pulls up the link to copy and paste as well. So it's just kind of nice to know that you don't have to go back into your library if you've already assigned it and like find that old activity. You can go to the activities section and do the get student link, and then you can find the teacher link down there. So I just wanted to point that out because that was a little fun tidbit we learned. All right. I'm glad Kelly likes that one. Any other thoughts, questions? Anything else? We just want to make it as useful as possible for you guys.
My final thought is just think about a layered approach where you start small and then layer on some of those more advanced tools slowly, and let your kids lead you as well too. Giving them a chance to play around with stuff will help. I think you'll see their skills advance pretty quickly, and then that will teach you what kind of things, what kind of tools do they gravitate towards. Oh, cool. Maybe they really love the highlighter. I should put that in more of my activities. Or they really love doing the voiceovers. So now I have this other activity. I'll just add a voiceover component and do more self-reflection type stuff after they create. Those are the kinds of things I think that get into the more advanced uses and really kind of more complex activities and posts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, cool. Christine, I'm glad to hear that that was helpful. All right. You guys have an awesome rest of your day. Stay cool. Go get that, go get an ice cream treat or some type of cool treat for yourself. And we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Great job, Maddie.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, both
Bye.
of
Thanks,
you.
Christine. Thanks, Mary. Hi, Carrie.
Well done.
Bye.